Hi, Ryan Kingsline here, founder of UArtsy. And at UArtsy, I've seen thousands of students come through and take classes, learn, and grow. And one of the things that I've noticed about artists is that we are known as these rule breakers. You know, many of us are kind of the black sheep of the family, and there's always like that accountant or lawyer or the engineer or somebody else that's much more, let's say they're much more in tune with reality and they follow the rules a little better. Well, we've kind of written our own rules and, lived our life on our terms, so to speak, right? This is what we're known for. But what I've learned over the years is that artists are some of the most chained and imprisoned people out there, and imprisoned by themselves. What I mean by that is that we have a whole series of rules that we live by. They're different rules than society, but they're rules nonetheless. And these rules create shackles to our creativity. I mean, and I don't mean that, and I'm not trying to say that in too dramatic of a way, because you almost can't. If you've ever experienced a total creative block, if you've ever experienced that dread of not being able to do something, looking at the blank paper, the blank canvas, and felt inadequate to the task. If you've ever felt that, you know that it's a horrible feeling. It's a dark feeling. And shackles is maybe not necessarily strong enough. So how do we lock ourselves in? The key thing to understand is that within our lives, at multiple stages of our life, right? At multiple stages of our life, we've created different, you could almost call them personas, right? But basically what they are is they're like compressed belief systems. The 4-year-old in us believed something very specific. The 8-year-old in us believed something very specific. The 16-year-old believed something very specific. 24-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old. At each stage of our life, we develop a different belief system. And it's not necessarily a linear process. Psychologists will make it that way. It needs to be studied for academic purposes. But you and I both know and can both remember who we were when we were 16. Think about this for a second. Who were you when you were 16? You're the same person, but you're also a little different, right? Maybe different things were going on in your life. When I was 16, we were leaving one college and running up to Alaska, and I was leaving all my friends. And I just met these friends earlier because I'd been moving before, right? And I go up to Alaska and I'm hanging out there and I don't know anybody and it's dark. And it was a brutal time for me as a 16-year-old. It was not something that I was at all a happy camper about. My belief system at that time, totally different than the one I have today, living in beautiful sunny California. Fantastic family, amazing kids, great business. I'm talking in front of you. I'm sharing all of this knowledge. At 16, I would have never thought that was possible. I was in a different universe, a totally different universe. I was a troubled child. I never finished high school. All kinds of things were going on back then. I was the same person, but I had a totally different belief system about what school was, what people were to me, how to relate to people. And we all have those. And we can all access them. We can all remember some of the things that we were thinking back then. And they stay with us like baggage. So those beliefs that I made when I was 16 are still with me. And they're with me in the form of rules. Or rules that I developed to help me succeed or get out of there. So we can take a simple example. How about your rules for being on time? For example, one of the things, my mother, God bless her, amazing, wonderful woman, but man, she could not be on time to save her life. And her life was a little bit disorganized. We moved around a ton. So when I finally got and took control of my life, when I was like about 17 or so, one of the first rules I made was, I got to be on time. Okay, maybe you made the opposite rule because your parents were always on time and you were like, this is crazy, I need to not be on time. I needed to always be on time because I needed to control my world. And I needed to not have that crazy of moving and all of this stuff. It was too much for me. So I made a rule, you're going to be on time. If you're on time, you're going to be successful, Ryan. And it worked, right? I got results from it. Doesn't matter if it's the right answer, the wrong answer. I got results from it. And then over time, that rule became rigid. And I had to be on time or I would experience anxiety. like extreme anxiety. I was like, okay, we gotta hurry, we gotta hurry. And in the early part of my relationship with my wife, Sonia, she's Indian, as in from India. And if you know anything about Indian culture, you will know that timeliness is a totally different equation. Timeliness doesn't mean you're in the same hour and minute. It doesn't even mean you're on the same day. Timeliness could mean it happens in the same year, right? It could conceivably mean, yeah, of course, honey, yeah, no, we're gonna do that. And then you're like, honey, it's 6 o'clock. Oh, I thought, no, let's do that next week. It could do that. It could be, it's nuts, all right? It's crazy. Totally different culture there. But it illustrates that we all have different beliefs about things, and they're not necessarily right or wrong. What they are is they're beliefs or rules that we set because we needed them at certain points in our life. But do they serve us now? Does my need to be timely serve me now? The anxiety that I feel like I need to be on time because I feel like if I'm not on time, I'm going to go back to that time when chaos reigned. Does that serve me now when I have infinitely more control over my environment, over myself, over my finances, over my, everything? I just have infinitely more control than I did back then. Do I need to be as controlled about time? Especially when it creates so much anxiety in my personal life. I don't. I don't need that rule anymore. But unless I understand where that rule came from, I might just think of it as a universal rule. Successful people are timely. And that might be a universal rule that I then tell my spouse, Sonia, successful people are timely. Well, I mean, there's a billion Indians. They're succeeding there somewhere. Somewhere they're succeeding there. All right? So, however we want to equate that, the primary thing we want to do is we want to move down from that generalized rule into something that's flexible and that we understand. Okay, if I experience anxiety when we're like an hour late, breathe. Nothing's going to happen, Ryan. You have control of your universe. You're not going to go back to that trailer park. You're not going to go back to that crazy. You're not going to go back to all of the moving around, and having no control of your world. It's not going to happen. It's just not possible. Relax, take a breath, you're going to be okay. We do the same thing in art. When we start, we are like, well, I need to learn how to draw because I can't draw. And then when we learn how to draw, we're like, well, now I need to learn how to draw better. Or you got to start to look and say, is that rule still applying? Do I still need to be able to draw at this certain level? Maybe we do, because that's the work we want to do. We want to focus on classical stuff and realism. Or maybe we want to focus on, anatomy, things of that nature, if that's the creative side of us. Do we need to still focus on all of that? Right? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe now we can let go and start to create and develop new rules. What about business? What about if you're a creative and you're doing business? What's your rule for creating a business? What's your rule for money? What's your rule for money? Oh my God, there's a whole, just a big box, right? Maybe our rule for money is that in order for me to make money, I got to be a little slimy. I got to be a little, a little loose with the morals. That's the people who make money are that way. If that's my rule, then I'm going to have a hard time providing for my family. I went through that myself. I experienced that exact same thing myself. It's not an easy thing to get through. To change your brain on that, because as an artist and as a creative, money was never my priority. But after being taken advantage of by multiple people, and then letting those people take advantage of my family through taking advantage of my time and also revenue and money and all that, through letting that happen, eventually I hit a peak where I realized, regardless of whether or not money is good or evil, if I don't control this, it's going to hurt my family. I can handle being hurt. I can't handle seeing my family be hurt. And we all have a different point in which we get triggered, right? Some of us are like, you can't take advantage of me, okay? I'm kind of cool with a lot of things, but you take my family, that's a problem. That's something I got to resolve. That's my girl, that's my boy, that's my wife, This is my job to handle that, right? So that was my trigger. That was my trigger where it's like, no matter what I think of this, this needs to get resolved. And I need to think about it from my own perspective. So this comes to the real meat of what I want to talk about today, because we are guided by so many rules in our life. Rules that we have developed through our beliefs and through the things that we needed to advance in life that made a difference in our life. Those rules are baggage. And the way I like to think about them is they're boxes. They're boxes that we have collected over the years, and these boxes have helped us build our life. Our life has come shipped in these Amazon boxes, and then we throw the box off to the side and we got this neat little cool new part of our life. But we still got the box. And so we need to learn as artists and as creative people, whether it's your business, whether it's your artwork, whether it's your whatever you're producing on a creative level, you need to be able to look at these rules as though they're boxes that you can step into. Okay, today I'm going to put on this rule of being the highest level craftsman, and everything I'm going to do it at this highest level. I'm going to produce at a high level, and then step out of that box. And later on that next day, be able to say, okay, I'm just going to play, and I'm going to draw, and I'm going to paint and sculpt and kind of see what happens, right? I need to step in, and I need to run this business with money in mind, and I need to be thinking about that. I got to have my mind on my money and my money on my mind, right? You got to have all this stuff. And then you need to step out of that box and say, now I just get to vision and dream and think and not worry about money, and just kind of decide what I want the culture of my business to be like. These are all boxes. And if we build these boxes into these fortified walls that define who we are, they only close us in. They're not protecting us from anything. They're just closing us in. So we need to be able to break through that wall, step into a box, step out of a box, head over to this box. We need our beliefs and our rules to be flexible. Flexible, something we can step into and out of. In order to do that, we are benefited by knowing the history a little bit. Why do we believe that, and do we still need to believe that, right? Because some people might think, well, this rule is part of my integrity. I need this rule to be a person with integrity, right? You still have that integrity if you understand why that rule was created. We don't want to stick with a rule just because we are the type of person that sticks with something. Because you have to honor the real you, the you that made that rule. It made that rule of timeliness because that rule saved you, elevated you to a new point. So now you need to honor that initial impulse, which was to get to that next level. And in order to get to the next level, now maybe you need to get rid of that rule and you need to start to be a little more flexible with timeliness. Otherwise, you won't get to the level after that, right? These rules are part of a system that helps us grow. The rules are not the end-all be-all. They're just steps on a ladder rung that we're climbing. And we use this rule, and we use that rule, and we use this rule, and it helps us grow. That's where the integrity is in our commitment to ourselves and to our growth and our future. That's what we're committing to. So as a creative person, think about all these rules and these regulations and these strict ways of thinking about things that we have too. Right? Sure, I'm the black sheep of the family, but through rethinking what I thought of business. And granted, I didn't rethink of business. I was just like, oh my God, my wife is pregnant. Now what the heck do? I guess I got to start a business. So I started this business. And in the process, I had to rewrite all my rules about money and business and being an owner. I mean, I was literally, before this, I was working for somebody else. And I remember saying to him, I'm not worried about money. I don't care about money. I just want to do something good. And then I remember thinking 6 months later, man, that guy's thinking about the money. And what's going on with me? I'm getting threatened, with maybe this job doesn't exist, the economy's not helping, and it wasn't working out in my favor to not think about money. I had to step up and start thinking about money because that's how I make a difference in my life. That's how I made a difference then. Okay? And that was one ladder rung, and money's up here too, and vision is up here, and there's just constant ladder rungs that I'm going to be climbing. But they're just things that we need to rethink and redevelop our relationship with. So, What is it that you are so codified about, that's part of your identity, that you don't need to be locked into? Is it timeliness? Is it that your artwork has to be at a certain level? Is it that you can't be a business person because business people, aren't your cup of tea? Every artist is a businessman. You can't get around it. You look at artists like painters like Lucian Freud, where they're selling paintings for $100 million. You don't think there's a business revolving around that? Doesn't mean that there's employees and all that, but there is certainly accounting. There is certainly income and outcome. There is certainly a business around that in terms of how to manage contracts and negotiate with museums and all of that different stuff. Business is a part of our life. And as creative people, sometimes we have the most rules around that. And I find that's one of the biggest things we need to step out of, is all those rules about business so we can start to think about it on our own terms. Take care of yourselves. Talk to you soon.